The story opens in 1974, where a woman melts wax and pours it into a mask, carefully swirling it around to coat the inside. Soon after, she serves more food to her son. Moments later, the father enters carrying another child who refuses to sit still, making it difficult for both parents to get him into his chair. Eventually, they are forced to tie both his hands and feet to the dining chair. As he struggles, he claws at his mother's hand, causing her to slap him hard. Years later, at a fast food restaurant, while Carly talks with Paige about her internship, Wade arrives and apologizes for taking so long in the restroom. She then excuses herself, leaving the two alone since they are dating, and goes to find her own boyfriend, Blake. However, he is more interested in his new car, leaving Paige disappointed. But just as she is about to walk away, he calls her back and apologizes. Back inside the restaurant, while they are talking, Nick and Dalton come out of the restroom and join them. At that moment, Carly grows annoyed as Dalton keeps recording her with his video camera, so he goes outside to bother the couple, record them while the two share an intimate moment. Not long after, the group continues their journey to watch a football game. Along the way, Wade turns up the radio while complaining that the game is going to be crowded. Shortly afterward, they come across a roadblock, forcing them to take a detour. As they speed up to catch Blake's car, they find them fooling around inside. Even though she tries to explain, the group doesn't believe her. They then begin discussing whether to continue driving or camp for the night. In the end, they decide to stay. Soon, the group pass a roadside sign advertising Trudy's House of Wax. Moments later, after driving along a secluded forest road and crossing an old wooden bridge, they arrive at an open field and prepare to camp for the night. They then begins enjoying themselves around the campsite. But suddenly, a foul smell drifts toward them as the wind picks up, leaving everyone wondering where it's coming from. Eventually, they brush it off and continue their evening. While everyone is busy doing their own thing, a truck suddenly pulls up and parks directly in front of them, its headlights shining straight into their faces. Confused, they repeatedly ask the driver to leave. However, he remains completely silent, simply staring at them. That's when Nick throws his beer bottle straight at one of the headlights, forcing the truck to drive away. Later that night, while everyone is asleep, someone quietly approaches their tents, recording each of their faces one by one with a camera. Soon after, Carly wakes up but finds no one around the campsite, so she goes back to sleep beside her boyfriend. The next morning, just as they're about to leave, Wade discovers that his fan belt has been cut, as if someone deliberately sliced it. Nearby, another gust of wind carries the same foul smell, prompting Carly and Paige to investigate. Before long, Carly falls into a ditch filled with the rotting bodies of dead animals and immediately starts screaming. Hearing her cries, the rest of the group rushes over. As Wade helps her out of the pit, another truck suddenly pulls up. Its driver, Lester Sinclair, is dumping more animal carcasses into the pit. When the group confronts him, he claims it was just a prank and admits he placed a fake doll's hand among the dead animals to scare them. After learning that Wade needs a new fan belt, Lester offers to take them to Ambrose, saying he knows someone at the gas station who has one. After discussing it, the group decides that Wade and Carly will go with Lester to buy a fan belt, while the others head off to buy their tickets. However, during the drive, Lester keeps giving Carly unsettling looks, making both of them increasingly suspicious. Then, after he suddenly pulls out a knife and stops the truck, they decide to walk the rest of the way instead. When they finally arrive in Ambrose, the town appears completely deserted, with not a single person in sight. Soon after, they check the gas station, but no one is there. They then decide to stop by the church, only to realize a funeral service is taking place inside, making them feel awkward for interrupting. Soon after, they step back outside. Bo Sinclair comes out and explains that he's the person they've been looking for. He asks them to wait for him at the gas station for about 30 minutes before heading back inside the church. To pass the time, they decide to visit the House of Wax Museum. There they notice that nearly everything appears to be made of wax, even the building itself. Inside, they find countless lifelike wax figures displayed throughout the room. Meanwhile, beneath the building, someone is sculpting a wax statue. Suddenly, he hears someone entering the museum. After looking around for a while, Carly is startled when she notices someone watching them, so Wade decides to check outside while she stays behind and waits inside. Moment later, he signals that no one is outside. As she turns around, she's horrified by a deformed wax figure and quickly rushes outside in terror, urging Wade to leave immediately. At that moment, the rest of the group, who went to buy the tickets, get stuck in heavy traffic, so they decide to turn around. Soon after, Wade and Carly return to the gas station and begin checking the fan belts hanging on the wall. However, none of them are 15 inches long, so he grabs the closest size anyway. Right then, Bo arrives, so he explains that they don't have a 15-inch fan belt. Bo tells him he has one at his house. Before leaving, Wade asks to use the restroom, but he explains that the one at the gas station is out of order. On the way, Bo casually talks about the Sinclair family and the House of Wax. Even when Carly asks about Vincent, he calmly continues his explanation. When they arrive at his house, he tells Wade he can use the bathroom inside while Carly waits in the truck. Meanwhile, back at the campsite, Blake asks Nick and Dalton to pick them up because he wants some time alone with Paige. Inside the house, Wade looks around as he searches for the bathroom, completely unaware that he's walking into a trap. After leaving the bathroom, he notices a bedroom door standing open. Curiosity gets the better of him, so he steps inside and begins looking around, casually examining the family's belongings. At the same time on the road, Nick and Dalton realize their route has disappeared from the GPS. Outside, Carly grows bored and steps out of the truck. However, the moment she turns around, she realizes it's the same truck that confronted them the previous night. Alarmed, she immediately gets back inside and repeatedly honks the horn. At that moment, Wade is examining a strange device when he hears the horn outside. Suddenly, the lights go out. Moments later, after discovering the door is locked, he calls out for someone. Without warning, Vincent silently appears behind him and slices his Achilles tendon with a pair of scissors. Desperately, Wade scrambles backward, grabs an object from a nearby table, and blindly swings it in front of him. Seconds later, Vincent closes the distance and stabs him. At the same time, Carly begins to worry when Wade still hasn't come back. So she calls Blake, but just as Paige reaches for the phone, Blake stops her and pulls her back to the tent. So she sends them a voice message, warning them about Bo. Moments later, he walks out of the house. Startled, Carly quickly hides her phone and asks where Wade is, but he calmly pretends he has no idea. As he slowly approaches, she immediately gets inside the truck and locks the doors. Acting confused, Bo demands that she unlock the truck and even threatens to call the police. However, the moment she mentions the truck, he suddenly slams the side window until it shatters, grabbing hold of her leg. Thinking fast, she starts the engine and floors the accelerator, spinning the truck hard enough to throw him aside before speeding away. But her escape is short-lived as the rear wheels slip off the raised driveway, causing the truck to bottom out. With no other choice, Carly abandons the truck and sprints back into the deserted town. Meanwhile, in the basement, Vincent drags Wade's unconscious body onto an operating table and begins preparing him. He stitches the wound in Wade's chest, shaves off his eyebrows, carefully measures his face with specialized tools, then slowly opens a series of valves. Moments later, hot liquid wax pours through the pipes, coating Wade's entire body as he lets out agonizing groans. At that very moment, Carly desperately searches for a place to hide and eventually slips inside the town's church. She calls out for help, only to discover that everyone inside is actually made of wax. The voices echoing through the building are nothing more than recordings. Shortly afterward, Bo arrives at the church, forcing Carly into hiding. He methodically searches every corner but finds nothing. Just as he's about to leave, he suddenly stops. Hidden nearby, Carly grows increasingly tense, fearing she's been discovered. Without warning, someone reaches out from behind and grabs her. Panicking, she breaks free and runs for the exit, but Bo quickly catches her. He drags Carly back to the gas station, blasts loud music to drown out any screams, then carries her into the basement. There, he straps both her arms and legs to a patient stretcher. Not long after, Nick and Dalton arrive at the gas station searching for them. They look around but find no one. Unbeknownst to them, Carly is directly beneath their feet, while Bo silently threatens her to stay quiet. Unable to find any clues, Nick and Dalton decide to split up. Downstairs, Bo seals Carly's mouth shut with super glue before heading back outside. Moments later, Nick approaches and asks if he's seen his sister and Wade. Bo calmly denies ever meeting them. Hearing Nick's voice outside, Carly desperately tries to scream but can't make a sound. So she pushes one of her fingers through the drain grate and continues trying to scream. When Nick hears the noise, Bo casually claims it's just his dog. As Nick's attention is momentarily diverted, Bo crouches down as if tying his shoe, then quietly snips off Carly's finger. Afterward, Bo invites Nick over to his house, while silently pulling out a knife. Desperate, Carly rips her glued mouth open and screams, alerting Nick. He then overpowers Bo before rushing inside and locking all the doors. Afterward, he heads down to the basement and immediately frees Carly. Meanwhile, after splitting up from Nick, Dalton notices the House of Wax and decides to take a look inside. There, he discovers Wade encased in wax and desperately tries to pull it off. However, Wade's skin has already fused with the wax, leaving him to silently endure the unbearable pain. Suddenly, Vincent attacks from behind, but misses. Dalton immediately runs for his life, only to end up at the entrance to the underground tunnels, where Vincent catches up, shoves him down the shaft, then brutally decapitates him. Meanwhile, after rescuing Carly, Nick realizes everyone in the town is made of wax. Soon after, they smash the display glass and grab a crossbow. Suddenly, Bo opens fire from behind, forcing them to flee into the town's old movie theater. Inside, they're surrounded by rows of wax audience members. When Bo enters, Nick and Carly blend in among the statues. Not long after, Bo spots Carly and fires at her. At the same time, Nick shoots Bo in the arm with the crossbow, giving them just enough time to escape. As Bo steps outside, Nick fires another bolt, driving it straight through his chest. He then carefully walks toward him to make sure he's dead before taking his shotgun, only to realize it's out of ammunition. Meanwhile, back at the campsite, Blake and Paige are about to fool around when the music suddenly stops. So he steps outside to check what happened and notices he has received a voice message. Moment later, someone quietly enters the tent. To her horror, she sees a figure wearing a wax mask, but she managed to escape. But then she trips and discovers Blake lying on the ground with a knife lodged in his neck. Terrified, she keeps running. She eventually reaches an abandoned factory, where she discovers countless belongings left behind by previous victims before rushing upstairs to grab a weapon, only to be suddenly stabbed through the floor from below. Panicking, she runs back downstairs and hides inside a car. When Vincent opens the door, Paige manages to strike him in the face and escapes once again. However, as she peeks out to see where he is, Vincent hurls a metal pipe straight into her face, killing her instantly before calmly recording her body with his camcorder. Not long after, the siblings return to the Sinclair house. Inside, Carly discovers old newspaper clippings revealing that the Sinclair brothers were born prematurely. Moments later, Bo suddenly returns, revealing that he somehow survived. The two immediately hide. As he painfully pulls the crossbow bolt from his arm, Vincent arrives carrying the bodies of Blake and Paige. Carly is left overcome with sorrow at the sight. Soon after, Bo realizes they're inside the house. By then, Carly has already slipped away. Right then, someone grabs her from behind, startling her. To her relief, it turns out to be Nick, who quickly leads her through a hidden door concealed inside one of the bedrooms. Moments later, trapped in the dark basement, Nick desperately flips one light switch after another, which ends up revealing their location until he finally finds the correct one. Before continuing deeper into the entrance, Nick suddenly spots Dalton's hat. Soon after, they discovers Dalton completely encased in wax. Heartbroken, Nick tries to free him, only for Dalton's head to snap off, leaving both of them devastated. Shortly afterward, Vincent arrives, forcing them into a fight. As he shoves her away, her body knocks into a lever, igniting the furnace. At the same time, Nick charges Vincent and slams him to the ground. Before escaping, Nick yanks on a pulley chain, causing molten wax to pour across the floor and temporarily trap Vincent. They then immediately flee the basement. On their way out, they spot Wade's wax-covered body, only to run into Bo once again. Enraged, Nick immediately throws himself at him. This time, however, Bo easily overpowers him. Meanwhile, the fire rapidly spreads through the furnace, climbing toward the upper floors of the House of Wax. As Bo gains the upper hand, Nick grabs the crossbow bolt lodged in Bo's chest, forcing him to let out a cry of agony, before repeatedly punches him in the face, but he manages to stab him in the thigh before kicking him away. The moment Bo stands back up, Carly smashes him across the face, knocking him to the ground, then continues beating him until he finally dies. Moments later, Vincent arrives and breaks down over his brother's body before turning his rage toward Carly, completely ignoring Nick as he calls out to him. She desperately tries to hold the door shut, but Vincent drives his knife straight through it before forcing his way inside. As the fire spreads, the melting figures reveal the real human bodies hidden inside the statues. At that moment, Carly desperately pleads with Vincent, but he refuses to listen. Meanwhile, Nick rushes in and tackles him. However, Vincent overpowers him. Then, he accidentally tears off Vincent's mask, revealing his horribly disfigured face, before Vincent immediately lunges to stab him again. Moments later, Carly rushes over, pulls the knife from Nick's thigh, and stabs him. Nick follows with a powerful kick, sending Vincent crashing from the top floor onto the body of his dead brother. Fortunately, Nick and Carly are stopped by a section of the floor that is still solid. As they search for a way out, Carly notices the walls beginning to soften. Realizing this, they start digging through it. Moments later, they break through just as the House of Wax collapses, carrying them safely to the ground. Meanwhile, both Sinclair brothers sink beneath the molten wax as Nick and Carly watch the House of Wax burn to the ground. The following day, police officers and ambulances arrive at the scene, recovering the bodies hidden throughout the town. When Carly asks how no one ever discovered the place, the sheriff explains that the area is so remote it no longer even appears on maps. He admits they only found it after spotting the massive fire that consumed the House of Wax. Not long afterward, Nick and Carly are taken away in an ambulance. As they leave, Carly notices Lester Sinclair quietly waving at them from a distance. At the same time, the sheriff receives confirmation that the Sinclair family had 3 sons.